In today's video, we're reviving the base model of this iconic series, the 233 MHz PowerBook G3 Wallstreet. I've tracked down 3 units in various conditions and will be building one fully working machine from the best parts of each. Once it's assembled, we'll upgrade it with a modern SSD, max out the RAM, and put it through SphereScale benchmarking to see how it stacks up against other classics. We'll also rate it using the SphereScore and test out some vintage games to see how well this machine performs nearly 3 decades later. Whether you're into Apple history, retro gaming, or just love seeing vintage tech get a second chance, this one's for you. Let's dive in. By 1998, Apple was in survival mode. Years of scattered product lines, poor executive decisions, and lackluster innovation had driven the company to the brink of collapse. Stock prices were tanking, market share was shrinking, and consumer confidence was nearly gone. But a turning point came in 1997 with the official return of Steve Jobs. He didn't just bring charisma, he brought a focused strategy that would reshape Apple from the inside out. That strategy was the now famous 4-quadrant product matrix.
Primarily wanted the pro products. Our education customers primarily wanted the consumer products. But they also wanted 2 different kinds of each one, desktop and portable. And we looked at this and we said, now, this looks pretty simple, but we couldn't find a way to come up with anything else that captured what they wanted as succinctly and as clearly as this. We said, finally, this is it. We've got to make 4 great products, and we can meet the needs of what our customers are telling us they want.
1 desktop and 1 laptop for consumers, and the same for professionals. It was a complete reversal from the bloated product catalog of the past. Instead of trying to serve every niche, Apple would pour its resources into a tight lineup of well-designed, high-performance machines. From that vision came the translucent, internet-ready iMac for everyday users, and for professionals, the Power Macintosh G3, and the machine we're covering today, the PowerBook G3 Wallstreet. The Wallstreet wasn't Apple's first G3-equipped laptop. That title belongs to the Kanga, released just months earlier. But Kanga was more of a transitional product. It reused the aging PowerBook 3400C chassis and dropped in a G3 chip, which made it faster, but also thick, heavy, and thermally challenged. It was never meant to define the future of Apple's laptops. That role belonged to the Wallstreet. Officially launched in May 1998, the Wallstreet series represented a fresh start. It was the first Apple laptop built from the ground up to take full advantage of the PowerPC G3 processor, and it showed. With a sleeker design, larger and brighter display options, and new modular features, it felt like a product that had been designed with purpose, not compromise. This model we're focusing on in this video, the 233 MHz base version, was the most affordable in the lineup. Now, while it didn't include the Level 2 cache found in the higher-end 250 and 292 MHz versions, it still offered solid performance for professionals on a budget. Apple even ran ads claiming that a 233 MHz G3 could outperform a 266 MHz Intel Pentium 2 in real-world tasks like Photoshop and video editing. And thanks to the chip's efficiency, it did all that without requiring a noisy cooling fan, resulting in a quieter, cooler laptop. Design-wise, Wallstreet was a huge step forward. It came in a matte black plastic chassis with soft curves, an iconic departure from the beige boxes of the past. It featured a bright 12.1-inch, 13.3-inch, or 14.1-inch active matrix display, a swappable module bay that supported a floppy drive, CD-ROM, or a second battery, and one of the best keyboards Apple had ever made. Responsive, well-spaced, and beloved by writers and developers alike. Connectivity was also ahead of its time. Dual PC card slots, S-Video out, an ADB port for legacy peripherals, and full support for Apple's software ecosystem made it a versatile machine for creative professionals, students, and business users. Perhaps most importantly, the Wallstreet line reflected Apple's renewed design philosophy: do fewer things better. It was a turning point for the PowerBook series, influencing the Lombard and Pismo models that followed and setting the stage for Apple's dominance in laptop design through the 2000s. Today, the PowerBook G3 Wallstreet stands as a symbol of Apple's comeback era. It wasn't just a laptop. It was proof that Apple could still innovate, execute, and inspire. And while the 233 MHz model may seem modest by today's standards, it played a pivotal role in restoring confidence in Apple's ability to build professional-grade hardware at a critical moment in the company's history. Here are the three Wallstreets I'm starting with. The first one powers on and gives a startup chime, but there's no image on the LCD. It also has tape on the LCD bezel, so I'm assuming the screen is bad. The second one boots right into macOS 9.2, and the display works great, but the case is in really rough shape. The third laptop also boots into OS 9.2, but the LCD is filled with lines and distortions. However, this one has the cleanest physical condition out of the three. My plan is to use the clean casing and mainboard from the third laptop, the good LCD from the second, and whatever else I need from the first one. That way, I'll end up with a restored and great-looking Wallstreet G3 that also functions properly. I began with the third unit. I started by removing the CD drive on the right and the floppy drive on the left. Inside the now empty bays, there are plastic latches, one on each side, up towards the top by the keyboard. Sliding both latches towards me released the keyboard from the housing. With the keyboard out of the way, I removed the metal heat shield and found a single RAM module installed. So there's definitely room for an upgrade later on. Next, I removed the clutch cover and disconnected the display by detaching the data cable on the left and the inverter cable on the right with a plastic spudger. Then, I took out the 4 T8 screws beneath the I/O door and the LCD lifted right out. It was actually one of the smoother LCD replacements I've done. Then I moved on to the LCD transplant. I removed the screen from the second unit, removed the screw covers, unscrewed the panel, and gently opened the LCD housing. After disconnecting the microphone cable from the inverter assembly, the display came right out. I aligned the new display and secured it with the 4 screws. Before closing up, I wiped down the LCD and housing with a microfiber cloth to make sure everything looked clean. Once everything was reassembled and tightened down, I plugged in the power and pressed the power button. And we have a working display. macOS 9.2 boots right up on the restored system. The screen looks sharp and the machine feels solid. Now that the LCD is working, I can finally verify the system specs. This restored PowerBook G3 Wallstreet features a 233 MHz PowerPC G3 processor, 32 MB of RAM, a 2 GB hard drive from a donor unit, a CD-ROM drive, and a 1.44 MB floppy drive. The display came from the second unit and looks great, while the third unit provided a nearly mint casing. Not bad for something built from 3 broken machines. With all the major components confirmed and working, it's time for the final upgrades, replacing that ancient 2 GB hard drive and maxing out the RAM. I'll be installing a 128 GB M.2 SATA SSD using a 2.5-inch IDE adapter, which should massively improve performance and reliability. I've included links in the description if you'd like to do the same with your own vintage Mac. As for the RAM, I'm upgrading it from 32 megabytes to a full 192 megabytes. To perform the upgrades, I removed the keyboard and heat shield again The hard drive sits on the right-hand side. Carefully unhooked the old drive and set it aside. Then I removed the RAM card. Before inserting the new modules, I used a pink eraser to gently clean the contacts. Just a little trick I've used over the years to ensure a clean connection. Once the new memory was installed and seated, I swapped in the SSD already mounted in the IDE adapter. With everything back in place, I powered the machine back on, and just like that, faster boot times, a smoother Mac OS 9 experience, and a huge upgrade from where we started. With the upgrades installed, it's time to see the SphereScale results and just how much performance improved. This PowerBook is part of SphereScale version 4, which applies to PowerPC Macs running Mac OS 9 and earlier. This version of the SphereScale uses two benchmarks, MacBench 5 for general system performance, and RaveBench for graphics and 3D rendering capabilities. Starting with MacBench 5, here's how the machine performed before and after the upgrades. CD-ROM performance couldn't be measured. Every time I attempted the test, it threw an error and wouldn't complete. This is likely due to compatibility issues with the test and the aging CD-ROM drive. Graphics performance saw a huge jump from 977 before the upgrades to 1,572 after. That's a 61% improvement. While the graphics hardware itself wasn't changed, the combination of a faster disk access and more available RAM helped to reduce system strain. In real-world use, this translates to smoother, finer animations, better UI responsiveness, and less lag when opening or resizing windows. Disk performance saw the biggest boost, jumping from 506 to 1,529, more than a 200% increase. This is entirely thanks to the M.2 SSD. Compared to the original spinning hard drive, the new solid-state storage loads apps significantly faster, reduces boot times, and eliminates most of the stuttering you'd normally see in Mac OS 9 with older drives. Floating point performance stayed nearly the same, going from 701 before to 704 after. These operations rely entirely on the CPU, and since we didn't upgrade the processor, that's no surprise. The processor score was also virtually unchanged, 425 before and 426 after. Again, expected, it's still the original 233 MHz G3 chip doing the work. Then I ran RaveBench, which focuses more on 3D rendering and GPU throughput. Intersections dipped slightly from 6,048 to 5,195, and movement dropped from 4,189 to 3,945. I'm not too worried about these because minor drops are likely just normal variation between test runs. But mesh and triangle performance showed solid improvements. Mesh rendering jumped from 15,751 to 18,120, and triangle processing rose from 8,799 to 10,579. These are the types of gains you'll notice when playing older 3D games, watching QuickTime animations, or running anything with a heavier graphical load. The added RAM helped the system handle those data streams more efficiently. So while the CPU didn't change, the real-world usability of this system has improved dramatically. The system no longer feels like it's struggling. It actually keeps up. In some areas, it even feels snappy by late 90s standards. Now onto the SphereScale score, which is the average of all benchmark results. The idea is that no single test gets more weight than another. It's an even composite that gives you a clear, balanced picture of performance. If you'd like to see the full SphereScale spreadsheet with every system I've tested, there's a link in the description below. And don't forget, you can now submit your own benchmark results to compete for the title of the most powerful vintage Mac. That link is also in the description, and I'll make sure to link a video above that walks you through the process of submitting your benchmarks. The Wallstreet PowerBook G3 lands right in the middle of the machines I've tested from 1997 through 1998. It edges out the original iMac, but only in RaveBench score. If you go by MacBench 5 alone, the iMac actually comes out ahead. What really stands out is how thoroughly the Wallstreet destroys the PowerBook 3400C from just 1 year earlier. It nearly doubles the SphereScale score. That's a massive leap in performance, especially when you consider the 3400C would have cost you around $5,000 in 1997. That kind of jump is impressive even by modern standards. The systems that outperformed this PowerBook G3 were all desktop class Macs from the same era. Even with similar processors, Those machines had more thermal headroom, larger components, and better expandability. The Wallstreet, by comparison, was designed to fit powerful hardware into a portable form, and in that mission, it absolutely succeeded. Now let's break down the SphereScore for the PowerBook G3 Wallstreet. This score includes 5 categories: build quality, aesthetic design, expandability, historical significance, and legacy collectible value. Each rated out of 5 for a total of 25 points possible. Starting with build quality, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. The Wallstreet introduced a new enclosure with rounded edges and a rubberized finish that felt more modern compared to earlier PowerBooks. It was an improvement over the Kanga, but it still relied on a plastic shell that hasn't aged particularly well. Hinges and corners are known to crack, so while it was decent for the time, it shows its age today. For aesthetic design, it scores a 4 out of 5. The Wallstreet marked a major visual shift for Apple's laptops. It moved away from the beige, boxy designs of the early 90s and embraced sleek, black curves with a wide body and a front-facing latch. It set the tone for Apple's design direction going forward, and it still looks sharp on a shelf. As for expandability and upgrade potential, the Wallstreet earns another 4 out of 5. It featured dual modular bays, swappable batteries, support for up to 192 megabytes of RAM, and even more unofficially, a removable hard drive, and easily accessible internals. In terms of historical significance, I'm giving it a 4 out of 5. This was the first completely redesigned PowerBook G3, launched during Steve Jobs' early return to Apple. It supported DVD-ROM drives, had an optional 13.3-inch display, and represented a serious leap in multimedia capability for Mac laptops. Finally, in legacy and collector value, it scores a 3 out of 5. While not as iconic as the Pismo or Lombard, the Wallstreet has a decent following. Its role in Apple's late 90s comeback gives it historical weight, but its large footprint and fragile plastics keep it from reaching top-tier collector status. Altogether, the PowerBook G3 Wallstreet earns a SphereScore of 18 out of 25. That places it solidly in the upper middle tier of vintage Macs. Well-rounded, historically important, and still visually impressive today. This PowerBook has officially tied for second place in the Retro SphereScore, landing right alongside the G4 Cube and the Blueberry iMac G3. Just a couple of systems sit ahead of it. 2 true icons, the blue and white Power Mac G3 and the original iMac Bondi Blue, each scoring a 19. Not bad company for the Wallstreet to be in. Now let's talk games. One standout title I tested on this machine was AstroChase 3D, a fast-paced space shooter that puts a 3D spin on the classic arcade experience. You pilot a spacecraft through deep space, dodging asteroids and blasting alien threats before they reach Earth. It's simple but incredibly engaging, and the visuals run surprisingly smooth for the era. Those of you who are regulars on the channel know I love playing AstroChase 3D on vintage Macs, and this PowerBook G3 did not disappoint. The goal is to defend Earth from red mines hurtling toward it, and my favorite way to play is with the Gravis Mouse Stick 2 joystick for the authentic retro arcade feel. The game starts with a few training levels, each one ramping up in difficulty. By level 6, chaos takes over. Meteors flood the screen, alien ships attack from every angle, and you're still racing to destroy incoming mines. The pace becomes intense, turning into a fun, challenging, and highly addictive experience.
Planet Earth destroyed.
Now, I don't have to explain Doom 2 to most of you, but I do have an embarrassing admission. This was actually my first time ever playing it. Right from the start, this game is awesome. Again, I used the Gravis joystick because I just love the arcade style control. The action is non-stop. The weapon selection is fantastic. I took a particular liking to the double-barreled shotgun, and the pacing keeps you hooked. As I made my way through the first few levels, I found myself not wanting to stop. and that's exactly what I plan to do off camera. I need to experience this entire classic from start to finish. The PowerBook G3 Wallstreet might not be Apple's most iconic Mac, but after restoring, upgrading, benchmarking, and gaming on it, I think it deserves a lot more recognition. For $1998, it offered serious performance, outstanding expandability, and a bold design shift that set a tone for Apple's next generation of laptops. It was also a product of Apple's renewed focus under Steve Jobs. Fewer models, better designs, and machines built with purpose. The Wallstreet embraced that philosophy. And with just a few upgrades, it still holds up today as a capable, collectible, and fun piece of Apple history. So whether you're a diehard vintage Mac fan, a retro gamer, or someone who just loves seeing classic tech come back to life, this machine is absolutely worth a second look. Check the links in the description for the full SphereScale spreadsheet and links to all the parts used in upgrading this PowerBook. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the PowerBook G3 Wallstreet, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more vintage Mac restorations, SphereScore reviews, and retro gaming content. There's plenty more on the way, including comparisons with other late 90s and early 2000s machines. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.